What's the tea with ACP? Here's the tea with ACP. That's kind of cute. Hello and welcome back to What's the Tea with ACP. We are so happy to have you with us today. And we want to let you know that it is Pride Month. So welcome back. We are here. Some of us are queer and we are happy to share the day with you. So it's a very special day because last year, basically on the same date, we started up What's the Tea with ACP, where we focused on it being a pride-filled show focused on queer LGBTQIA artists, and then we expanded the brand to include a wider variety of artists. So we are so happy to be bringing you a year's worth, a culmination of a year's worth of What's the Tea with ACP. And I want to make an announcement on the show today that next or 2 weeks from now will be the final episode of What's the Tea with ACP. Oh, I know, so sad. But we're moving on to bigger and better things. The world is opening back up and we have to prioritize some of the things that we weren't able to prioritize a year ago. So with that being said, I want to tell you about What's the Tea with ACP. We are a live webcast where featured artists chat with us about what's going on in their lives, their art, and their social experiences. We are here with the tea today, which is creativity. And this edition of What's the Tea, I'll be chatting with author, illustrator, and cartoonist, and also my dear cousin, Derick Brooks. We'll discuss his artistic journey, his creative process, and how the projects that he's designing are positively influencing cultural change. A little bit about Derick. Let me, so y'all can go on and find him, child. Let me give you some links, okay? Let me give you some links. Check them out. So a little bit about Derick. He's an author and illustrator who loves to create adventurous slice-of-life stories about Black folks. He's the illustrator of Bright Family Epic by Epic and The Last Chance for Logan County, HHM 2021, and is also hard at work on his debut graphic novel about the wacky sport of thumb wrestling called Grip Up, which will be released on Iron Circus in 2022. I would love to welcome my wonderful cousin, Derick Brooks. Hello.
Hey,
welcome. How are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Good. I'm
Happy
doing
Pride.
great. Thank you. Thank you.
I forgot to say that to you yet.
You're totally cool. Look,
Yeah.
June is busting out all over, okay?
It's true.
So we're here.
Got Juneteenth coming.
Okay. She's coming on down the trail. A party. Also, y'all, forgive my camera. She's acting kind of busted today. I don't know what's happening with her, but Deal with
being
it.
A hater. It's being a hater right now.
Deal with it. Y'all will be all right. You can just listen to our beautiful voices, serenade your eardrums.
Nah, man, you still look good. You still look
Thank
good.
you. Thank you. So, our tea topic of the day is creativity. So, the definition of creativity is the use of the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work. Right?
It's one of those words like you use all the time, and then you don't really know the actual definition of.
Exactly. So let me give it to y'all one more time.
Yeah.
It is the use of the imagination or original ideas, okay, especially in the production of an artistic work, creativity. So I want to talk a little bit about creativity with you, and kind of pick your brain about what that means. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to ask, how are you doing? How is life? What's new? And how's the panoramic been treating you?
I'm all right. Yeah, we just moved to from Richmond, Virginia to Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes.
About like a month ago. So
Mhm.
we are still by we I mean me and my wife and our wild pets who may or may not show up in this video.
We love pets. We love pets.
So we're adjusting, to like I've never lived in like a city. So this has been really interesting. I keep saying that it's like being on Sesame Street because like you step outside and it's just like mad people and they just walking around, hanging out, walking dogs. Like everybody has a dog. You don't like realize how many people have dogs until you move to the city. I feel like because everybody's out walking them, but it's been really nice, man. And we just been working. We just graduated school, both of us.
Yes,
So,
congratulations. Hey.
yeah. So that's been an adjustment where like we were just saying to a friend this morning, it's like always kind of looming in the back of your head when you're still in school, like when is it gonna start again and what and like I'm gonna do all of these like I guess when you go like later, like how I'm gonna do all these adult things and then also go to school at the same time. And now it's like finally gone. So it's like we just like have like unless we're doing work, we don't have nothing to do. So it's just like what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna go? Where are we gonna go? And you don't want to spend too much money. And it's also still a pandemic, regardless of all
Right.
of us being vaccinated and stuff. We've been a little bit looser than we were because we were on like hard body lockdown over here. So that has been an adjustment, like getting used to being like around people again and not feeling like maybe you shouldn't or like or just the like the anxiety of being out and about like this time last year it was just like everything felt like the plague like
Right.
like every object, every person, everything felt dangerous.
Okay, wiping down the grocery bags.
Yes.
Yeah.
So kind of getting back to a little more of a relaxed state. Still trying to not just full total guard down, trying to be smart still, but and be respectful of like all the people that went through all the things that we've gone through with the pandemic. But we living, thankfully, prayerfully, all
the
those
leaves.
things.
All the
been,
leaves.
man?
I've been good. I've been busy. Busy bee. So I don't know if people have seen or not, but I just got elected onto the AGMA Board of Governors, our union for classical singers and directors and choristers, or I should say soloists and choristers. And it's been a really cool experience just like leading up to that and getting to know more about the back end of my art form. So that's been interesting and been involved in a lot of different organizations that are kind of started up during the pandemic or right before. And so that's been cool too. Definitely got a a crash course in like producing your own content. Definitely receive
Yeah.
that, but it's good because now I know how to do it, right? So I
Yeah.
can continue to do that in my own
Right.
way. But it's been good. Also, I just got a new nephew.
Yes.
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 Jackson is here, honey.
Absolutely.
He's 3 weeks old and he's adorable.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say.
so, yeah, now I have two little nephews to drive me
Yes.
crazy and who I can love dearly all the time.
Absolutely.
So, very good things happening. And also, ooh, gigs are opening up, y'all. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
things are happening, things are starting to move. It's a little bit nerve wracking, but also exciting.
Yeah.
So, if anybody, has a sublet in New York City, holla at your boy, reach
Yeah.
out to me.
Hmm.
But yeah, big things happening, things are moving, things are shifting. So it's been really good on my end. I
Yeah.
can't really complain.
You excited to go back to the big city?
I'm excited. I'm, you know, feeling like a rusty old machine getting started back up again.
It's like you leaving home all over again. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, gotta oil my parts back up, get back
Yeah.
into motion.
Right.
But it's more exciting than it is scary. It's more like I'm ready to get back. Like I watch musicals and I watch shows and I get like super
Hmm.
emotional, and that tells me that like I need to get into it. I need to do it again. And
Yeah.
so it's a good thing, I
Yeah.
think. It's definitely a good thing.
So do you think will this be like your second time living in New York, or have you been back since
So
you
I've
left?
been back since. So for people who don't know, I was in New York for my master's in 2013 to 2015. And then I like went out and about and did gigs and lived at home and did all the things.
Hmm.
Um, and then I um, kind of ended up being back in New York for like small periods of time. So it would be like a month or
Yeah.
3 months.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like a second home now. I kind of know how it works, but I'm also a little bit curious about how it's looking like with COVID and
Hmm.
what that looks like, and like how
Yeah.
do you ride the train safely, and like
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of those things that I haven't really had to think about. And now I kind of have to retrain my brain to also like go there with, I mean, when you're there, you always have safety in mind. And like,
Hmm.
especially like the trains, you're always sanitizing.
Hmm.
But it's an extra level that you just have to think of that I think can be really easy to let go of once you get back into like that quick paced environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, I'm excited. I'm excited. Let me just say that. I'm excited. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, New York has always kind of not scared me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've always kind of stayed away from New York. I've been like twice for like,
Mm-hmm.
but never like an actual stay in the city. It's always been
Mm-hmm.
like kind of real, like in and out.
Right.
Um, Now that like we live here and it's
Mm-hmm.
getting used to just a different type of environment, different type of living. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was saying to my wife yesterday, like it's almost like community, not forced upon you, but just like there's way more people.
Mm-hmm.
You're way closer together just by the laws of a city, of living in a city, right? A
Mm-hmm.
large city, and so you just kind of you almost get thrust into just being more social than you might be, and New York has
Mm-hmm.
just always felt like way, way up here. I'm like, I don't know if I can handle all that. Like, I would probably like drive myself wild just being in it. But now that I'm here in a city, I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
see the reasons why people do this. Like, I see
Right.
why people like this, why this is inviting, why this is comforting, why like it's pretty dope to be able to just walk, you know, everywhere
Wherever.
that you need,
Right.
like uh, to a grocery store, or to even like kind of cool things. Like we have a record shop like 2 minutes from the house. We have
I
a
love
farmers market
that.
that's literally at the corner of the street. Like
Oh,
if you walk to the corner
yes.
and turn, it's a farmer's market every Saturday. And I'm like, yeah,
That's amazing.
so I get it. Like now,
Right.
whereas before I was just like, I would never want to be around all of that. Like I just
Hmm.
want to have my house right here, have a yard, have a, have my fence separate. Like I want to be able to see my neighbor, but I don't want to be close enough
That you got to be like, hey, how
that
you
I absolutely have to
doing?
say something. Otherwise, I would
Hmm.
feel weird just because that's how we was raised. But
Right.
yeah, it's been interesting. My mom and them love it. Like as she's gotten older, she's just like way more just like talkative to everyone and
Hmm.
just a way more social person than I remember her being.
Mine too. I feel the same way, actually.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. She was like super excited about it, but yeah,
Oh,
man,
love it.
I'm
Yeah,
glad you get to get out and get back into doing your thing.
yeah, me too. And for me, like, I don't think I would ever necessarily live back in New York City, like permanently, but bopping in for a few months and
Yeah,
bopping on
yeah,
back out.
for sure.
Yeah, and I would live in a smaller city for sure.
Yeah,
I like the city life, but there's nothing like taking your car for a drive,
that part.
and just being away.
Yeah, yeah, having
So
a parking space all the time.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I want to kind of talk a little bit about, because something we discussed a little bit before when we were off camera is just kind of like how you got into being, well, firstly an artist is what I'm interested in, like what brought you to the arts, and then also what brought you specifically to illustration and authoring and being a cartoonist, and how that came to fruition. Because I feel like it's kind of something like we were talking about, how it's kind of similar to the classical music space. Like as being an opera singer, it's like, well, how the hell did you become an opera singer? It's like,
Yeah.
seems like a kind of thing that is not the most attainable, or seems like it's just in a different space.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Tell us a little bit about that.
So way back when,
Hmm.
no, like I trying to think of like my beginnings in things, or in art, I should say, is always kind of weird because what I feel like I've learned over time is that everybody, like every kid draws,
Hmm.
um, which is what you do. Like, you grab crowns, you whatever, like, and it just, I guess some people just like kind of stuck with it, and then like
Hmm.
others like veered off into other things maybe. So it wasn't like something that it was just like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, or like, it was just a thing that everybody did, like,
Hmm.
and some people got better at it. But it wasn't, people like always take like drawing and stuff, and they're just like, oh, you're so talented. Like you have this like skill that just
Hmm.
God gave you and stuff. And yes, they did, he did, but it was also just like doing it all the time. Like
Hmm.
you do something a million times, you're gonna get better at it.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess that's how I just fell into it. Is just something that I like kept doing.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, I can't really pinpoint a reason why. I kept, other
Yeah.
than it's fun and I like cartoons, like, and all those things. But I just kept drawing. At the beginning, I just wanted to copy all like the cartoons that I saw. Like I would draw Sonic the
Hmm.
Hedgehog. I would just trace, you know.
Hmm.
Ninja Turtles. I was super hardcore Ninja Turtle dude. Like had every toy. Um, and so that was the first time I like made comics. I would just copy Ninja Turtle stuff, and then
Hmm.
one thing I never forget is like I used to trace all the things, and then my dad one time was just like, "Why don't you just try drawing it without tracing it, and see what happens?"
Hmm.
And I did it that one time. Then after that, it was a wrap. Like I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, okay, I can do this." Like,
Wow.
and so then from there, the next step was you just look at whatever and you try to draw it from looking at it, rather
Hmm.
than tracing it. And then that leads to like trying to draw like still life stuff and things around, and like as you grow older, you realize that you're really just absorbing all of these things, and then, you know, basically interpreting it on whatever, you know, a paper, wall, whatever. And so over time, it just kept going and going, and I really just think I just never stopped doing it, and that's kind of like how it got to this point, I guess.
That's I mean, that's I think how most people get involved in the arts, right? Is like, it's kind of like there's something that usually it's introduced in childhood, right? Like for me, it's like, you know, you sing your songs in school, A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah.
And like as it progresses, some people are like, I don't want to do that anymore. Or they're like, that's not something I want to do in my free time. Right. Yeah. And then as it develops, like you were saying, like you start to see, I feel like we start to see our own maybe talents kind of emerging, right? And it's so interesting the way that those two kind of correlate with each other. And I think it's even more helpful, of course, when like a school system fosters arts, you know, because a lot of schools, especially now, are like STEM focused. And I think we need a little STEAM focus. Okay. We need the arts up in there. And so I find it interesting that like that tends to happen, and where it's like interesting to find out where the age is, where it goes from just like, oh, this is a fun kind of hobby and something that I'm good at, to like, oh, I can make this as a career.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where that may have like kind of bubbled up for you.
To be like all the way honest, this is something I like say a lot, and it always sounds weird to me at going on 38 now, but I really didn't grasp that what I'm doing now was like a part of an industry, and like people actually did this for a living, like in a real way, until like 12th grade. Like, and that sounds really wild to me to say now, because it's like it's common sense. Like, of course people are making these cartoons, you know, of course people are making these comics and books and everything else in between, video games, all of that stuff. But I guess it just never really struck me as something that I would be able to do. And that falls back to what you were just saying, is like a lack of really understanding that all these things are like attainable. Like children don't really, at least I didn't, you know, I think it's probably, you know, I think each generation, you know, hopefully gets a little bit better. But I know for me, it was just, I just drew, but I didn't know where to channel that. Like I didn't know where to put it. And the school that I initially ended up going to came to visit my high school, and they showed this, they showed a reel of just, you know, all this different student work. And that was the moment where it clicked. And I was like, oh, that's what I'll do. Like, I draw all the time. I'm the best in the school, you know, because there's always one kid that's like supposed to be the best, right? And then all that gets like blown to hell when you go to college and you meet every kid that was the best in every school. And you realize, oh, okay, I'm not alone. Like, it's other people out here that are really good. But yeah, so that was the moment where I realized that, oh, I could draw like cartoons, and I really wanted to do animation. At that point, I still wanted to like actually make things move, like actually animate. Now I don't want to go anywhere near that, because it's a lot of work that I'm not built for. But that was the moment where like it hit me, and then so then after that, when I watched like Nickelodeon and stuff like that, I was just like dead set on like, how do I get there? How do I do this for a living with no information whatsoever? And this was like, you know, beginnings of the internet really being just this like ubiquitous thing.
Honey serving dial-up.
Yeah.
Okay. Waiting for I listen. I know. I
we're in
know.
this weird in between space where we know what it was like before, the internet was everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but we also are pretty well adjusted to it being everywhere now and being able
Mm-hmm.
to use it to our advantage. Like the what's we're millennials, I guess. So what's before that,
Mm-hmm.
or what's after us now?
After
Boomers
us
or
is
something?
but like right before
I feel like it's like
Generation.
two now, right? Like
I guess it would be Generation X
what's
would be
before?
before, and then
Yes.
after us would be Gen Z.
Yeah. And there's another now, right?
Yeah, I guess the kids. I think they're like. There is another one, but I don't remember the name
Yeah.
of it. But it's like basically
Yeah.
my nephews, like
Right.
5, the
Right.
kids who are like born literally into technology,
Yeah. They
like
come out the
literally
they come
3 years
out with
old.
their
Like,
phone just
can we watch Coco Melon? I'm gonna pull it up.
it's wild, man.
Oh,
But
it's crazy.
that was the moment I think in my head when I think back where like I really it kind of clicked that because I had no idea what I would do other than that. Like I didn't
Mhm,
really, to be honest, I really didn't have plans. Like I
mhm,
didn't college wasn't really like a plan. I had no idea what I was gonna do. Like,
mhm,
I felt like people know, like, okay, well, this is what I'm gonna go to school for, or in my family, like what me and my other cousin Charmin, I think are the only people that have graduated school. Like I think I can't remember if my mother went to school for a little while, but like we are like, first
mhm,
generation basically. Um,
mhm,
and it was an option, but I don't know. I guess I just didn't know how real it was,
mhm.
or how attainable any of it was. Like it just I don't know. I just figured like, okay, you just get a job and
And make it work.
yeah, and make it do. We look at our parents now and we're like, I don't know how y'all did this. Uh,
Not a clue. I'm just like they must have just had to follow there's like this path, right? There's this like you go to high school and then you go to college and then you do whatever, you get married and you have kids and then you do your job and then you retire and die. Like that's the
yeah, yeah,
pipeline, right? And I think that for our generation there was this like adjustment in the pipeline that was like actually there's other things that you could do
yeah,
outside of that, and people kind of started to understand that like you don't necessarily have to go to college or you don't
right,
necessarily have to go straight away to college,
yeah,
and that if you don't do that it's not like you're being like stuck at home.
hmm,
There's other ways that you can progress in life
yeah,
outside of just like doing the traditional path. Now
yeah,
I will say I did do that traditional path. However, postgraduate, after that, I said, "Girl,
yeah,
listen, I got to
yeah,
figure it out. I got to
yeah,
make it happen in some kind of way."
yeah,
But I identify with you with like the 12th grade year thing. Like I didn't know I was going to do a career in music.
mhm,
Didn't think that I could do a career in music.
yeah,
I was going to go into psychology. So, and, if I wouldn't have got into school for music, I would not. Maybe I would have got back into it, but like
hmm,
I would have focused strictly on psychology and maybe did like a choir.
yeah, yeah,
And so, those like moments, I guess, in life where you just destiny works in your favor,
hmm,
and you make it happen. But I'm one of this actually brings us to a good point,
hmm,
is so if you don't watch the show regularly, those of you watching, I always ask my guests to come up with 2 to 3 questions that we'd like to like discuss and possibly maybe not answer, but have open discussion about on the show.
yeah,
So the first question goes perfectly with what we were just talking about. And it is, how can we make information about art related careers more accessible to Black children? Which is
yes,
an amazing question. So I will hand it to you first, if you like,
sure.
and then I will give my 2 cents.
Like the trick to like the thing is like I'm not sure how exactly, but I know it needs to happen in a way that it's
Mhm.
not happening now to me. But
Mhm.
I'm also not in the school system. I don't, know. But I think like the real backbone of that question to me is like, how do we separate art um, from being viewed as like this kind of just like hobby?
Mm.
Um, I think a lot of times we tie it to that. It's one of those careers where like if you were a child and you told your parent like this is what you want to do, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's cute, that's cool. Like, but in the
Mhm.
back of their head, they'd also be like, wow, my baby's gonna starve because I don't know how you are supposed to make money
Mhm.
doing that. And I think our parents' generation is a lot more practical in that way, where they're like,
Mhm.
we want you supportive as all get out. We want you to pursue this thing, but we also don't maybe have the information that you need to help you
Mhm.
to pursue it, and
Mhm.
we don't want you to starve. So maybe do this other thing while you're trying to get there. You know what I mean? And we will support you, in every way that we can. And so my wonder is like, how do we approach children like who want to do who have interest in those types of things, like we were saying earlier when you start out,
Mhm.
like how do we encourage them more, how do we build with them more to say that, hey, this thing is actually something that you can do if you just want to make comic books, for a living, you just want to make, children's books, you want to make animation,
Mhm.
anything, like all of that stuff is actually possible. It's not like this, it's a dream, yes, and you will have to work hard to get to it, but it is also not like light years away. If
Mhm.
so, what can we do to push you? What can I look up? You know what I mean? To who do we need to talk to? You
Mhm.
know, where's Derek? Find Derek and ask him. What the process is. How does this work in the real world? Like
Right.
how do you make money from this? Because like the money, like there's money in everything.
Mhm.
That's the thing too. Like there's an industry for everything. You just
Mhm.
gotta like find the little golden brick road to it, which
Right.
it can be difficult, but it's there. Um, and another, like, speaking about art specifically, like a lot of the times I try to tell, like I've talked to a couple like younger like student classes and stuff before, and I'm like,
Mhm.
yo, everything is art. So you have to look at
Mhm.
it broader than just like drawing portraits and fine art and all of that. Like you we don't have to tie art to being a starving artist. Like it can be a
Mhm.
part of it, but that can happen with anything that you do.
Right.
If it's if the the clientele ain't there, you're gonna be starving whether you're selling donuts or you're trying to draw pictures.
Exactly.
So like, how do we separate that? How do we say, hey, look at this table that you are sitting on, like somebody had to draw that first,
Mhm.
and that person maybe does product design or something, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
um Film and TV, like those are artists as well. Music, that's art. Like
Mhm.
everything around you has been created by somebody, like woodworkers, everything.
Literally.
So like open the scope of it. Like don't think that when your child says that they want to be like an artist, like don't think that they're only, you know that maybe they'll get into a gallery or something and maybe they'll figure out how to make it, but otherwise they're just gonna like not be able to succeed. Like
Mhm.
try to push them towards what may interest them in, like under the umbrella of art, because once you introduce them to like a bunch of other things, then like they might find something that like works. It may be a
Mhm.
little more lucrative than drawing books. It may not, but like let's just try to give out the information a little bit more. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, it
but
does.
yeah, it just feels to me, I know, I only think back on it now as an older man, but like at the time, now I look back on it and I'm like, oh, I just didn't have information. Like
Mhm.
it wasn't that I didn't have the skill. It wasn't that I like, and there's privilege and all those other things that come with it
Mhm.
too. Obviously, like some people are able to sit around and draw all day. Other people gotta go to work because they don't, you know,
Don't
they
have it. Yeah.
yeah, they didn't when they were younger, they didn't weren't able to do, to have as much free time as maybe you had or something like they had different responsibilities, different stuff going on in their lives. They come from different environments, like where people ain't encouraging you to like keep drawing them comics. Just
Hmm.
like you need to go out and do this, and make sure you can survive, and then maybe you can do that on the side.
Hmm.
But like, what can we say to these kids to be like, hey, no, this is possible. You just have to actually, you know, have someone help you with the information and actually tell you that it's possible and not make it just seem like this pipe dream.
Right. Right. I agree. I think um, one thing that can definitely help is what we're doing right now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
having these kind of discussions with artists and saying like, well, how did you do it? What did you do? How did you come into this, right? And I think that there's a lot of time where depending on what level the artist is on, they're not necessarily the most accessible.
Yeah.
And so I think that making yourself accessible, like you're doing, like I try to do, is super important. That's like a first step. I also think that something that I mentioned earlier was like STEAM, right? We talk about like our education in schools, and most of the time, education now in 2021 is focused on STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, math, which is great. Not knocking STEM, okay? But there's a part of that that needs there's a part of that that's missing, I think, which is the A, which is the arts, because arts and creativity fosters so many more things that you don't even realize they do, right?
Right.
Fosters a sense of community, sense of creative thinking. Like if you can think creatively and you can also apply that to engineering,
Mm-hmm.
think of the things that you can make.
Yeah.
Look at a roller coaster. A roller
Yeah.
coaster is created by an artist who is an engineer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get this like idea of like these things don't intersect with each other, but a technician is someone who made a clock. I'm looking at a clock right now. It's designed. It's not just like it's a stick.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Right.
like there's product, there's things behind it. So I think that's another space that we can kind of push a little bit more and say like we need this in our schools. We need a focus on this. We need to stop taking funding away from
Yeah.
the arts programs and putting it into other programs, or not even putting it into other programs, but literally just taking the funding and being like,
Right.
we
Just
can
shutting it
put
down.
that into like a new parking garage for the
Yeah.
teachers. Like, yes, don't get me wrong, the teachers need somewhere to park, but let's find the funds for that and not take them from something that is needed.
Yeah.
So I think there's space there, but also I think maybe just from what I've been seeing now, there, because of technology, obviously, there's a little bit more accessibility. And we kind of talked about how, you can look online and try to find the things, but it's like being in a library with you said
Yeah.
it's kind of like being in the library without a categorization, right? Like we don't have a Dewey Decimal System
Yeah.
to find a career path. And
Yeah.
so, I think it's also a part of like a parent's, like you were saying, a parent's space to be like, to foster those creative things that you see in your child from early on. Like I wouldn't have gone into music if it weren't for my mom seeing that, oh, Elliott can like sing. And
Mhm.
also like putting music into our household
Yeah.
and putting, thoughts into our brains of like, you can do this and you can achieve more, and it's okay to follow a path of the arts. Like it's not my mom was more of an advocate for me to follow the path than I was myself,
That's
and i
great
think
though.
i think it too comes from like the generation not before us, but like our parents generation,
Mhm.
and where they had like maybe they had an aspiration to go into music,
Yeah.
but because there was no kind of guidebook or guidelines, and because
Yes.
of those like preconceived notions of how things are supposed to go, like that pipeline,
Yes.
right? That like
Right.
high school, college, boom, boom,
Hmm.
boom.
Yeah.
And even if it were you did that and did music, people were still like, well, how you gonna make money from that? How you
Yeah.
gonna make money being a jazz musician? What you're gonna end up on drugs somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
that discouraging
Hmm.
thing that sometimes happens in, I think, all communities, but also within the Black community, where it's like because we need you to do better, and because we
Yeah.
want you to do better, I'm going to encourage you to do things that make you more money or that you think will make more money,
Yeah.
instead of saying, okay, yes, you can do that. And let me help you and support you in doing that, and be a person that advocates for you,
Yeah.
so that you can be at a level where you're making a sustainable income and making a sustainable life within your career.
Yeah.
And so I think there's like a redefinition happening, hopefully, where we start to encourage more of the artistic space, and just like, I think all aspects of a person, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's not just like, oh, well, if they're good at soccer, then they'll only focus in soccer. No, we need to start getting like Black kids into like multiple activities. The
Yeah.
amount of
Yes.
little white kids that I know that I teach that are in piano lessons,
All
voice
the
lessons,
things.
soccer,
Yeah.
swimming, on a school team, does cheerlead. It's like,
Hmm.
now sometimes that can be much. Now sometimes, the parents give them it's a lot. But it's such an important thing, because you can actually take time to develop a skill that you may not have known. Like, if I never was able to do a choir, I would have not necessarily known that I could sing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
having that accessibility in school and also out of school
Hmm.
was so incredibly important. So I think maybe making it accessible in general, and then also um, just promoting these like talkbacks in school, like going into schools and being like, look, I did this. Here's some information. Let's see what
Yeah.
you can do.
Right. Yeah.
It's just making it that make doing that, and then also putting yourself out there, being a face for,
Hmm.
well, I'm an artist and I'm Black, and
Yeah.
you can also be an artist who is Black.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's
I'm in the
cool.
process of trying to really make that a focus going forward. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still trying to figure it out because I have like terrible like nervousness about like, oh, like speaking and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then like once I do it, I'm fine.
Because you're doing great right now. I mean, this is a very low stakes environment,
Kids are
but baby
different though, man.
steps.
You go in that classroom and they just be ready to say everything.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
you gotta have somebody like reel them in because they got like all the
Mm-hmm.
questions, but they should. And
Mm-hmm.
like what you were just saying, like really makes sense as far as like because it's also like how we make all those things that are like people maybe don't because like a lot of times like we don't have the money to be in soccer, football,
Mm-hmm.
basketball, choir, like all these things. Like, so how do we make that more accessible for like Black children and people that like don't maybe come from, you know, a background of money like that can really be able to put all that out for their child to experience. Like a lot of kids just
Mm-hmm.
have more experiences and
Right.
then they're able to use that to really go in these other directions that we can't always see for ourselves until we
Mm-hmm.
get to a way later point in life. And
Right.
then it's good that we still come to it, but it's like, dang, what would have been possible had I been able to really imagine myself, doing that way back, when, you
Mm-hmm.
know, when I could have built an even stronger foundation, practice even more. Like you just don't
Mm-hmm.
realize it, man. And
Exactly.
one other thing too is I try to also like I want to give as much information as possible, but then I also want to make sure that, especially with art, make sure people know that this is everybody's journey is really going to be extremely personal to them.
Mm-hmm.
So like no matter how much advice I give you or anyone else gives you, you really have to take that advice and apply it to your life in the way that it'll like will best serve you. You're not going to be able to go out and do exactly what I did or what you did and be successful. Whatever, you know, successful is for you. You can't just take the formula and then just, you know, and go do the same thing. And I learned that the hard way. I tried, I would ask people, you know, I would step out of my, you know, little comfort zone and just ask the things that I wanted to know. But then I would also kind of try to just do the same thing. And it never worked. And it wasn't until I pulled back and just observed, but also like observed for how I could, you know, apply it to my life in the way that it would like best serve me, rather than just trying to copy it. Like, it's like, okay, this person is doing this way. Let me take a mental note of that and say, all right, so if I start doing this, I can't think of any specific examples, but like, if I start, you know, moving in this way, then maybe it'll be a little bit more beneficial to what I'm trying to get towards. And, you know, the funny thing about it all, as far as like, quote unquote, making it, because I don't, you know, I'm still,
listen, we're all in transition.
It's day to day over here.
Okay, that's and you know, and that's not just for artists. Like, I think that's for anybody's career path, right? Like, we're always growing, we're always advancing. So I think it's great.
Yeah, it's just trying to. It's a daily process of trying to figure it out and being okay with that process. Like, if you can be okay with it, then you're kind of, I think you've kind of reached a, you know, a good point to continue to grow off of. When you're not okay with it, you're probably not doing what you need to be doing. And I know that is can be like a privileged thing to say, because sometimes you just gotta do stuff you don't want to do. Like, you gotta make the ends meet. But like, one thing about working more traditional, I guess, jobs, was like, I was never satisfied. Like, and it kind of goes back to the thing I was saying before. I realized that a lot of like being like whatever level of success that I wanted to be, really just depended on how long I was willing to hold out for it. And like, a lot of times with like art, like, it does end up being like, who's just gonna stick around the longest? Like, because like, mad people will go to school for it and like, but not end up, you know, doing anything with it, as far as like, well, that sounds harsh, like never making it, I guess, maybe to the professionally to the space that they maybe want it to be. You know?
Exactly.
It doesn't make them any less than or whatever. Like, it's just, it really sometimes ends up just being a waiting game, because like, art is so, you know, people are like, oh, you're better than this or that, but like, we all just do what we do. Like, no one is really necessarily better than anyone else. It's so like subjective, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Like, you know, I might not like this piece of art at all, but you might think it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen, and that's perfectly fine. And like, understanding that exists in the professional space too, in all these careers. Like, so there's room for you. Like, is what, like, I always want to tell like kids and people coming up, like, there's space. You just sometimes you gotta snatch it. Sometimes you just it is given to you easier than maybe others. And that's not always fair, but it does happen. But it's like, are you just can you hold out for it? Can you afford to hold out for it? Some people can't.
Right.
And there's only so much you can do about that. But I think just like, back to my original point was like, yo, you can't just copy somebody's playbook and get exactly where you want to be. Like, you do have to meet yourself where you're at. Like, see how you can make things work for you, and what little snippets you can take from it and apply to what you're doing, and it'll probably like help you. So
exactly. Well, talking about like making space and making room and kind of what that looks like, right? I think it kind of gives us a lens into the next question. So what strides do you think your field has made toward equitable change, and where do you think it's fallen short? So I can answer this one first because it's something that, well, I've been talking about.
Like you got some things to get off your chest.
Something that I've been talking about for a few years.
Yeah.
And so, my field specifically is in the classical arts, and even more specifically in opera. And so I think that there's a lot of great initiatives happening. I think there's a lot of great steps. But we're talking about strides, right? Like what are the strides? Like what has happened past one step of saying like we'll have more inclusive casting? What happens after you make a commitment to diversity and then your company is still all white presenting? What happens after that?
Yeah.
And so I think that my field is finally coming into a space where the old guard is kind of being pushed out,
Yeah.
or they're changing the way that they've thought about things, or not even changing, but realizing the amount of privilege that's there
Yeah.
and the amount of things that have been overlooked within our space, our artistic space. And so I think people are hopefully in starting to wake up a little bit to that and see that, yeah, you may have cast like 2 Black people in the last year, but you also cast 60 white people and like 1 Hispanic person and like no Asian people.
Yeah.
So what is that? Is that equitable? I don't think so.
Right.
And then it also goes back to like the whole kind of like starting from when you're a child, like how do they, or even not even childhood, I'll say college, how do you reach out to a community and say like there's opportunity here for you at this university or at this company, and we want people who look like you, we want people who have your experience, and we want you to enhance and enrich our space because you have something important. You are an important person. Your viewpoints are important. What you have to say is important, and not just for like publicity's sake.
Yeah.
And I think some companies are definitely starting to do that. But there's a very long way to go. I think that the changes that we're pushing for right now within our industry will take years for sure. And obviously there have been, I mean, goddamn, compared to the 1980s to 1950s to 1890s to, the strides that have been taken are immense. But there's also the whole space of like systemic inequality that kind of trickles down from the top to the bottom. And so sometimes we search for the scraps there. And I think a lot of people in my industry now, specifically Black artists, are trying to, and I won't say Black artists, I'll say BIPOC artists, queer artists, LGBTQIA artists are trying to find their voice. And it's easier now to find a voice because you can go on Instagram and you have like 10 other people who will rally behind you because they feel the same way, where 10, 15, well, shoot, I can't say 10 years ago anymore because, well, 20 years ago, you couldn't really do that. You'd have to find those people, right? You have to search for those people who want to advocate for the same things that you are. And now it's easier to really rally cry and call companies out, call the field out, call the whole space out on the issues that have grasped whatever artistic space or whatever artistic field or whatever field you're in, and say like, we need to put a lens on this because it's wrong. And it's been wrong for so long that no one actually sees it. So that's kind of my gist on mine. But what about you? I'm not sure.
I mean, first, I think you're very spot on. And I feel like our paths kind of intersect in a lot of ways, just because it really is kind of all of creative, artistic like pursuits. Like specifically, I work in animation, and I'm trying to specifically stick with like publishing, but I do animation stuff still here and there too.
You got to
Um,
get the coins.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I mean, I like it too.
Mm-hmm.
I see publishing as a more long term, like sustainable thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I can still do when I'm old. I can still, put out books. But in as far as like it, like animation is hand in hand with film. It is film, So obviously we see that there are a lot more, or seemingly, a lot more, just inclusive. I hate to use that word. It always sounds.
I
it,
mean,
it's like there are black kids on TV, right? Like
mm-hmm.
there's Craig of the Creek. There's shows with black people, black
Mm-hmm.
families. There and just other people other than white people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like on TV, in books, and there seems to be like this hunger for that content. But also it still feels trendy too at the same time
Mm-hmm.
to me. And so the question I always get led back to is like, well, like where do you go once the trend of it ends? Um,
Mm-hmm.
how do we how do we maintain like whatever this push forward is? We could look at last
Mm-hmm.
year, what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a clear like line where things like fall apart, like where things start and then where they fall apart and how they
Mm-hmm.
end up just being the same as they ever were. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because last year, like, what, a bajillion more followers, like we are popping, like, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna start this change. We're on your side. You know, again, it took Black Death for us to get up on, and jump on your
Mm-hmm.
side again. My bad, but we are here, and we wanna advocate for you, make things more equitable. Let's go. Let's do this. Like,
Right.
and now here we are a year later, and it ain't that same push, bro. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little quiet, you know.
Right.
And I think one of the things about that is, to put it like in the simplest terms, is like making promises that you can't really keep,
Mm-hmm.
because it's hard. Like
Mm-hmm.
that work is super difficult, and it takes daily, you know, daily work
Mm-hmm.
to make it even start to work. And we're not even counting like the centuries that came before that put us in this position.
Mm-hmm.
So I am always left at, well, how can you do this long term? How can you make this equitable long term? Because all the things that you're trying to do right now are really kind of short term, and you just think that, and we got to start somewhere, but like really think about that before you start putting out all these promises and making all these commercials,
Mm-hmm.
and, and like, and then who's still at the top of these chains? Like, are there people making black shows? Yeah, but are the showrunners black? Are
Mm-hmm.
you are the directors black? Like, what, or any other ethnicity? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it still helmed by white people? And
Right.
even if it isn't, like, who still has the last say so in animation? Like, who's giving the notes? Who's like, it's such a all of these things that I work, all these spaces that I work in are such collaborative areas that is
Mm-hmm.
like often it's still just a white person at the top of it all
Right.
that has the last and final say. But I do think, like, that sounds pretty. That sounds like I don't think things have gotten better at all. But I mean, there has been change. Like I said, we do see, just more representation across the board,
Mm-hmm.
and people being allowed to tell their stories, and not just being able to tell it, but kind of, in a lot of instances, being able to tell them the way that they want to tell them. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's important. I think publishing is, although there is definitely still some, like, some conflict in between, like, what, uh, people are being paid versus others,
Mm-hmm.
and the representation within like books and stuff like that. All of the people that I have worked with thus far have been really thoughtful, like, and just people that are really out to try and change things and be mindful of all the different intersections that we have, and the people that are reading, and like just making an effort, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to try
Mm-hmm.
to be inclusive and representational with all the content that they're putting out. But there's just, you know, there's still some hard spaces to break into. There's
Right.
still lack of ownership. There's still, you know, wage disparity, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, big time. There was a whole tag on Twitter called "Publishing Paid Me" that just kind of put everybody on blast,
Wow.
because people were just revealing, you know, what they were paid for a book,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, like white creators versus every other creator, like the numbers don't lie. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so there's no hiding from that, and they
Right.
have to be accountable for that. And what are you going to do to make a difference in that? That's more than just, you know, putting up a black square and saying that, you know, you care about these issues. And
Mm-hmm.
how can you do that when things are quiet?
Right.
Because the only time y'all do it is when something drastic happens.
Right.
So how can we all, and that applies to all of us, for real, for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can we all do more when things are quiet?
Right.
I think is maybe the easiest way I could say it. Because
Right.
that's when the gradual change, I feel like, is really coming. Like, of course,
Mm.
you're going to be outraged when you see someone murdered on camera. Like, it would be wild to not be
Right.
outraged at
That
that.
part.
So, but what are you going to do when this microaggression happens,
Mm-hmm.
and you just don't believe me? You know, how are
Mm-hmm.
we going to change that? You know, how are we going to change this clear wage problem
Mm-hmm.
that is on display, you know, but it's like, you know, out of our hands. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's do something about that, man. Let's not just bring people in to maybe make the whatever story you're trying to tell more authentic. Let's
Mm-hmm.
actually let them tell their story.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, we do need to be consulted. We need to be there. We do need
Right.
to have a hand in it. I think if you want to tell a story about black people, you need to have some black people on staff.
Okay.
But also, you know, are you really the best one to tell this story? You know,
Right.
does I want I want it to break even.
Mm-hmm.
I want white people or whoever. I want us all to be able to tell stories about all of us.
Right.
That would be the ideal dream, of course, is for that to be a world where everyone was the norm and not just white people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but like, what steps are we taking towards that? Like, how, you know, because giving space to, and I'm not trying to, when I say all this, I'm not trying to knock anything, because look,
Mm-mm.
I watch all the stuff, I love it, like, and it's
Mm-hmm.
necessary small steps towards the change. But like, we also got to think about that stuff too. Like, do I need to be telling this story about this type of person when they're that type of person can actually tell their own story? Like,
Right.
and let's give them the space to do that, man. Like, because that's still lacking, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is people being able to tell their own story, and getting the platform. Like, every now and then it seems to come, but like, it's plenty more where that came from, and it's still. And another thing, no,
No, but
like in animation specifically, I feel like, and maybe this is a little bit of my own like jadedness coming through, but and you know, in a lot of spaces, like a lot of these people out here that can't get to where they want to be, in these professions, are like already ready to do the work. They've already
mm-hmm.
reached a professional level of work,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still like hoops that you end up having to jump through, or like if you don't know the right people, like again, if
Mm.
that type of thing happens. And like in animation, there's a big thing like where you have to test to get onto like a show,
Mm.
um, but like it kind of ends up gatekeeping, sometimes, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or just locking people out that are already skill wise are at the level that they need to be to do the work. They could do the work. It's just like they're competing with others now too. But then like these people will reach out to you and be like, "Yo, you want to test for this show?" And you'd be like, "Yeah." And so you do this test. The test is a lot of work. Like if you are doing, like I did a character design test, and they give you a whole packet, like, and you have to do all this work, and you might not be getting paid for it. You most likely are not.
Damn.
So you're doing all this in the hopes that you will get this job. And it's for me, it was very easy to kind of foolishly think that I was singled out and like, I'm special. Like they didn't, like, it's not like any other job and they didn't ask a bunch of people to do this same thing and they're going to pick the one that they think is the best for the job and want. Like, it's real easy to be like thinking that you done made it. Like, oh, all I gotta do is this test. I can bang this out like this is nothing. Like, I got the skills, right? And then you turn it in, and then you might not hear back from them at all. Like,
wow,
you don't. And like, sometimes you do. But I've heard many stories where people did tests and they just never were even contacted. So you just put in this time and effort. You also didn't get the job, and you also didn't even get a reason why you didn't get the job. You just out here,
right?
And so like, there's been talk of like, how do we at the least get people paid for that, or just change the process completely, because it really ends up being like this gate that you already did all this work to be good at what you do. And then there's this one last barrier that you got to get through to make it. And you often can't make it through that. And it's really discouraging.
Wow. So that's interesting, because we're talking about barriers and we're talking about kind of making it through that. So what happens once we make it through the barriers, right? Like, what does that mean? Are you successful at that point? Or are you still feeling like you still have to kind of jump through more hoops to get to where you need to be? So our final question is, how do you measure success, and how do you think it's changed over time? Is it what you thought it would be? And now we're going over time a little bit, so I just want to double check and make sure you're good.
I'm good. I've probably been yapping on.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Listen, we are open to conversation over here, okay?
Yes.
And so I read this question, I said, because a goal of mine, like growing up, I was always like, I just want to be successful. Like the song says, I just want to be successful, right? That was my thought. Like, I just want to be successful. And over time, I've kind of like, I thought it was one thing, and success is something different for every person.
Yes.
And every career and every field and how do we define it? I don't know. Yeah. Because I think even the people who we think are the most successful still feel like they have more to grow. Someone I think is successful, Oprah Winfrey, right? Successful talk show host, interviewist, author, all the damn things, okay? But I still feel like she probably feels that, like, yeah, I am successful, but there's still more work to do. So what does that mean for the people who are not as successful as Miss Winfrey? And what does that mean for the people who also define success not as for a monetary thing, but define it as maybe fulfillment is their version of success?
Yeah.
So this is an interesting. What do you think? How do you measure success? Or how have you?
It's like you were saying, man, it ended up changing so much throughout the years. Like, and I went like, I feel like I went across the board with things that I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to make clothes. I wanted to do tattoos. I thought I wanted to do editorial illustration. I, like I was saying before, when I initially decided to go to school, I thought I wanted to animate. Like, I just jumped and jumped. I was making music for a long period of time and barely drawing. I was just making beats all day. I was rapping like I'm never gonna be a rapper. I was just, you know, you fall into all these different things, really just trying to search for like what the definition of success is going to even be for you. And success is such a crazy word because like what you just described as far as like Oprah is like that is a measure of it, but like there's a million different measures, and society will make you think it's one thing, so you feel like you haven't lived up to what that thing is. Thus, you feel unsuccessful. You might be unhappy at your job. Um, Thus, you feel unsuccessful. You might not have as much money as you want. You know, it might be more than enough money for this person over here, but for you, you're just like, nah, I got to keep pushing. I got to get more because I got to do more. I want to help people out, or I want to, you know, I just want to not have to think about a bill. You know, I want to just be able to pay comfortably, and then everything else is cool. Like, you know, so for me, I think success is whatever it is to you at that current moment in time, and you have to like accept that it's going to always change over time. So don't hold on to like, if I reach this certain amount of money, then I'll be successful. If I reach this, then I'll be successful. Because once you get there, you still got more life to live. So it's, I think, better to like, I don't know, try to just, you know, figure out what it is for you in that second, in that moment, and hold on to that, and then be willing to embrace the change that's going to come. For me right now, successful is just being able to just it's being able to do this for a living, despite how hard the work is, the times where I don't feel like doing it or whatever. Just knowing that I actually wanted to do something, and that whether I know how I managed to do it or not, like that I actually did it. Like, I think like at least once a day, I think now that like, dang, if God forbid I did pass away, I did actually do what I set out to do, for even if I only did it for a day. Like, and I've been doing it now for about going on, you know, 3 years. And just remembering the times before that where I thought that I'd never do it for even a day. Like, it would never be able to happen. Like, and not because I really believed that, but because I just didn't see how. I didn't have the answers to it, and I didn't know the information. And so success to me is like crossing that threshold. And like, I don't, by no means do I want to go back. But if I do go back because I have to or whatever, you know, I do feel like, okay, I did that thing that I said that I was, you know, going to be able to do. I did it at least once, at least for a day. I drew some stuff and I got some money for it. Like, and I didn't have no other job or nothing else. It was just that. Like, I think that's what it was for me. And over time, like I said, it grew. I started when I started this journey that I'm on now. I thought still that I wanted to do animation stuff. I thought I was going to do character design, period. And then I had the production that I was working on just kind of like fell apart in a way, because the people I was working with had falling out with the company that they were working with. And you know, I was just a cog like in the wheel. Like, I was just doing pre-production work. But the people I was working for fell out with the people who they were working for. And so next thing you know, it was like, okay, you're done, and, you know, doing what we needed to do. And I didn't really, until a little bit later, get all the information as to why that even happened. It just kind of abruptly stopped. And I had quit my job. Like, I was, you know, full-time doing this because it was paying about the same as what I would be at my job. So it was like, why do I need to do this anymore? Let me just try to take this plunge and see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so once that happened, I had to put my feet on the ground and really like figure it out. Like, and
Right.
that was how I ended up getting into publishing.
Mm.
Was just talking to different people that encouraged me to pursue it, and realizing that it was a whole thing. Because like early long before, I had wanted to do like children's books and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I just had no idea, how to do that as well back then.
Right.
And I didn't think it was something that I would do either. And then
Mm-hmm.
boom, here comes all this information that I didn't have before, and I was like, oh, so I guess I could actually make this happen. And then I just kept pushing forward with it, and I ended up getting an agent. After that, I ended up finding like work. Like I just started to put myself out there more too. Like that's a
Right.
part of it always. Um, and so then my idea of that success changed, because I was like, oh, this publishing thing, I kind of like this like a little bit more than animation. Like the animation money is probably a little bit better in the immediate, but like this just feels more sustainable to me. And I ain't got to
Mm-hmm.
leave my house. I don't have
Right.
to go clock in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that that was something that I want, that I didn't know that
Mm-hmm.
I even wanted before the pandemic even happened.
Right.
I was working from home 2 years before that.
Right.
So once I got to that point, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I thought I wanted to be like in California in an animation studio.
Mm-hmm.
Now I probably wouldn't turn it down if
Mm-hmm.
it was offered, but
Right.
I'm like, no, I kind of like being in the house and having control over my time. You know,
Right.
it's hard to manage sometimes, but I like it. Um, so that just goes back to just over time, you do different things and you grow and you start to realize that this is what I actually want and need in my life right now. And it might, next year we might talk again. I might be like, man,
It's
I hate it
totally
now.
different. Okay.
But for right now, I'm like, okay, this actually feels good. This feels like right, where I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's a feeling that you maybe can't describe.
Mm-hmm.
So when people ask you, it's hard to give them something like to touch to be able to understand. It's like sometimes all you can say is like, you'll know when this is for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, do you want it? Like
Right.
after that. As far as like, is it what I thought it would be? Yeah and no.
Mm-hmm.
Common question people ask, like, and I think you had asked it even. Um, it's like, yeah, how's it feel to like do that for a living? Like, oh, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
interesting. That's cool. Like, you don't hear that every day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so what's that like? And I'm just like, I don't know. Just
You're just living.
yeah, I really am. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you're being like annoyingly humble, you know, or whatever, but it really is like it's day to day. And like the
Mm-hmm.
large like the work that I do is freelance at its core.
Mm-hmm.
So it always is subject to change. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like I was just saying, it's not like I'm going into an office and I get a paycheck every, other week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just contracted, like at the end of the day. So like even though I have managed to work regularly for the past 3 years, and I thank God every day for that, like so I'd still be worried out here.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, man, this might fall, I could mess this up. I could not do a good job. This might fall through, you
Mm-hmm.
know, tomorrow. So what am I doing to prepare myself for that? I don't know if I'm
Right.
doing the greatest job. But like, yeah, I don't know what to say sometimes. I just like, I don't know. I'm just like, when you're in it, you don't fully know how to explain it. It's not until like
Mm-hmm.
way later and you can reflect on it that
And you're like,
you can probably give
oh.
some good answers. Because
Mm-hmm.
like I have the same, first time I saw you sing, I was like, what is going on? I was like, this has been here the whole time. Like, and I know that I am not as close to like my father's side of the family as I have been with my mother's. So like I know y'all obviously, but seeing your talent just like on full display, like in your zone, in your element, like that was the most mind blowing. like, like I distinctly remember it like that, and just how amazed I was at you being able to do that. and thinking probably the same things you thought about me. It's like, wow, how did you get to this point? Like what things did you do to put yourself in this position? Like, and what did it take for you, sacrifice wise and just like practice wise, to like be able to to do this? So I'm like, I can never do this. So it's just it's amazing.
Thank you.
And I feel like I've never told you that like directly, but yeah, I'm hella proud of you and just amazed by what you are able to do. And I just be just over here just like wondering like, dang, how did one get here?
I thank you for that, because I feel the same way about you. I really do.
Yeah.
Like,
thank you.
I see your work and I'm like, wow, wish I could do that. I could fake do that. I could probably like fake it. I could probably like figure something, maybe.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna be good. But I just think I'm just like, that's what I think is so cool, is that we're both in the arts and they overlap in that way, but they're still far enough apart where it's like, I want to know more about what you do. You want to know more about what I do. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, is that like we can have these discussions and learn about each other and continue to foster our relationship, artistic relationship, and you know, our family bond through our careers,
right?
You know, and I don't think many people can say that, other than people being like, well, my dad worked at this company for 25 years. You know what I mean? Like that, it's a different thing. And I think it's really cool that we're able to do that. And I want to give you a shout out right now, because we're talking about success. Okay. Somebody just got a little published piece. Okay. Can you give us a little information about what just came out, because it's fab. It's fabulous.
Yeah, so like, thank you first off. Even before that, like I watched your talk with Andre too, and like it gave me that same feeling, because I really don't know Andre, like talking about it. Like, we obviously we know each other and we're cousins.
Listen,
like I just would hear about him from afar, from like my grandma, and I knew he was, I knew he was in New York. I knew he was doing this cool ass stuff that like that I just had no idea about, but it was just like so from afar. So it was like so interesting to like hear that, hear you guys talk about it all and just really see where his journey has taken him, man. And like, it's amazing. Like, that is another thing where I'm like, how do you do that for a living? Like,
me too. I'm like, I can think of ways, but it's probably not right.
Yeah, but I can barely put an outfit together, man. Okay, so
yes.
What Elliott was talking about is I was asked by a mutual online to participate in his first picture book that he wrote. He's another artist named Dapo Adiola from the UK. And so he wrote this book that is essentially like I'd say it's like a love letter to like your unborn child. Just affirmations and just it's called Hey You. And the description is usually like an empowering celebration of growing up Black. Let me see if I can get this on the camera. Yes. But like, so he asked 18 of us artists that he likes and respects and stuff to come together and each do a piece within the book. So he wrote all the text for it, and then we were each given a single spread page to illustrate. And this is mine.
And I love it.
So by this point in the story, the the child in question is like grown and like he's creative. He does, and it was open. Like, it wasn't like a gender specific thing either. It was really open to interpret it however you wanted. If you wanted to draw yourself, you could. If you wanted to just make it up, you could. So basically, yeah, he just asked all of us to come together, and I'll try to flip through some of the pages here, and each create our own little spread based on the text that he wrote. which, like I said, is
Wow.
just like a letter to his unborn child about coming into the world, being Black, and just like not just surviving, but like understanding that you're important, you're special, and that like you have gifts to give to the world, and to not be afraid to to pursue the dreams that you want. And so yeah, and it's really cool. This is, I was telling you before, this is my first time seeing my work in print on like a large scale that's like distributed. Everything else that I've done has been just like self-published things that I made and
Mm-hmm.
took conventions and sold and stuff. Um, but this is the
Wow.
first time I've seen like my stuff in big print, and it's like in stores, like people can buy.
Yes,
My
it
name is on
is.
the cover. Like it's extra super wild. It goes back to what you were asking me, like how do you define success and stuff, and like and what people ask me, like, oh, how does it feel to be like, I don't know what to say. I'm just like, I am happy. I'm
Right.
definitely happy, but other than that, like the feeling is kind of indescribable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like kind of cool to be able to say
Yeah.
that. Like, and this is another thing where I'm like, all right, now if something happens to me, like there's something, like I left
You
something
left some
here.
legacy.
Um, Even no matter how big or small it is, like I left like at least one thing
Mm-hmm.
that like is out of my hands and into the world, and it can do what it wants with it now.
Mm.
But like, yeah, the feeling of that is, I guess, what is success to me. Is just feeling like I left a part of my story uh, out here for the world to receive. And
Wow.
then, once you do that, it's kind of out of your hands, but it's dope.
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. I am just so immensely proud of you.
Thank
And,
you so much.
if y'all want to see a little bit more of his artwork, check him out below, okay? Because it's so cool, and I something that I really truly love about your artwork is your style. Like there's this sense of style to the way that you draw and the way that you illustrate that is just for me feels so unique. And
Cool,
I
cool.
feel like it's I've seen other like Black creators, and sometimes the work kind of seem sometimes let me say sometimes, okay, sometimes the work kind of seems a little bit familiar or like
Mhm,
similar to things we've seen other like Black creators,
mhm.
cartoonists, illustrators make. And something that I really like and appreciate about your work is that it doesn't seem like it's in one like lane, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like it's very accessible
Mhm.
to many different people, not just like Black people reading or Black
Yeah.
people looking at the art. Um, and I just think it's beautiful. And I think I also feel like you draw, it's like fun. It's fun art. You know what I mean? It's
It's
not,
yeah.
it's fun. It's beautiful. It's fun. And I'm excited for your project that's coming out.
Yeah.
Okay. Grip up. Okay. Talk about all the things. Okay. I'm just so incredibly enamored with what you do and how you do it, and it makes me want to go get some supplies and figure out how to do it
You should,
myself.
man. You should.
I thought, I have many things in my mind that I want to do that, well, I just haven't done. So
Hey, man.
maybe
All it takes
I'll
is
start
time.
with a little Procreate. See, I
Yeah.
already know. I
There
know
you go.
something. So, we'll talk. We'll chat.
Yeah.
Give me some
Look, I got
starting steps.
all the info you need. Absolutely. I'm always here to encourage. Like, yeah. And like I said, same to you, man. Like again, I'm just as enamored with your singing ability, and just you as a person, man. You're just freaking cool. Like
Thank
you're just a
you.
good person. And I like, you're a little bit younger than me, but it ain't like crazy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I remember just like being children, like too, like, and just seeing where we have grown, just
Yeah.
as people. And I'm just proud of all of us for just being like good, decent people. Like
Yes.
it's really just a blessing to have, just be able to watch family like flourish and do the things that they want to do, and I want everyone to. So yeah, like I appreciate it, man. Like I don't know, man. I'm just over here just doodling. Is what I just feel. I just
And
the
we love
style
it.
thing is weird because like I spent forever trying to figure out whatever style was, and like honestly, man, once I stopped caring about that and about being successful and all that, that's when the stuff started to come. And it's weird because it sounds kind of like, I don't know, cliche to say, but that was it. Like it actually took me just like stepping out and being like, I'm gonna make the things that I want to make, and then people are gonna have to come to me.
Exactly.
And you know, hopefully they will. They did. Hopefully they still do. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that now, because I really struggled with it for a long time, feeling like I was just being derivative of a lot of stuff, and I still have issues with it sometimes. And you know, it's natural for humans to just compare each other whenever we see something.
Singers do that too. We do that too.
I figured.
Yep, we do that too.
You know, it's like I can't help what my voice sounds like. It's just my voice. So yeah, it's really, that felt good to like hear you say that, and like people have started to say it as of late more frequently, and it's just like, oh, that's cool, because like I spent so much time trying, and now that I'm not necessarily trying as much, it's like it's coming more natural, and I like that, and it's just cool.
You're cool.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Same to you, man.
It's amazing. So, well, I guess it's time to kind of wrap up here, huh?
For sure.
We've had a very interesting conversation. We talked about what it's like being an artist, an illustrator, published. Bloop, bloop. Also, just FYI, he was on Sesame Street. So, just so y'all know, famous.
I got a couple books coming out this year too, so I'm kind of excited about that. I try not to, like, I don't know, I'm always super like, oh, it's nothing, whatever. But I'm trying to do better at like pumping myself up or being excited about things and being like, yeah, I got this coming and stuff.
And I'm gonna be on that ass about doing that, because we need what you have to say to be put into the world, and we need your viewpoints to be heard and shared. Yeah. And so I'm always going to be like, what's next? What you got going on? Give me some information. Give me some tea, honey. Give me. So, you know, we'll chat, but, I'm gonna wrap up. Hang out. I'm gonna let you hang out backstage. But I just want to say again, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of the show and making it so special. And I just really appreciate what you have to say. I appreciate your art, and I appreciate your viewpoints. And thank you so much for being on.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun. It's always good to talk to you, and hopefully, you know, anybody watching picked up on things that we were saying, and it really has some sort of impact or helped.
I'm sure.
Just reach out to me. I'm always willing to talk. So
yes, I'm sure it has, and I'm sure it will, because the episodes will live on. Yes. We're creating a legacy. Haha. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna chat with you in a little bit, but I'm gonna put you back. Okay. All right. I want to thank you all so much again for tuning in and watching What's the Tea with ACP, our penultimate episode. And we'll be back. We'll be back with other information, and we'll be back with other stories to tell. But this specific chapter is coming to an end. So please tune in 2 weeks, where we have our next guest on. They are an amazing person. You'll get some information on that this upcoming week, so be on the lookout for that. And again, we want to thank you for joining us. We want to wish you happy Pride, and we thank you for watching What's the Tea with ACP. See you in a couple Sundays. Thank you.